Hey guys, welcome to Wealth Wisdom Financial Podcast. If you noticed, I'm in my home office. It is summertime, so we are doing the home thing. Sometimes the office thing. It just depends. It's summer, so gotta be hanging with the fam. As we run businesses, I like to have businesses that isn't just controlling me, but I'm helping control it and doing the things I want to do and love. And so today I'm interviewing a good friend. He's also a co author with a really good friend of mine. And his name is David C. Barnett. So, David C. Barnett is a small business transaction expert. You'll see why I have him on the show today. He's based in Canada, and he works with entrepreneurs across the globe through online consulting, training programs, and valuation services. Again, that's so important. If you listen to this, really take notes on this because beginning with the end in mind is really important. David helps business owners buy, sell, finance, and improve their companies. With over 2 decades of experience, he's facilitated dozens of business deals and advised hundreds of clients worldwide. He's also the author of 10 Amazon um, best books, right? And all kinds of different things from local investing and franchising, pitfalls. And he has a YouTube channel as well, which I think we're going to be on it. So totally subscribe to his YouTube channel. Look for the episode with Amanda and Brandon. And he's also had Mark Willis, my mentor, on the podcast, and he co-wrote this book with my mentor, Mark Willis. And so I really wanted to have him on today because I've read the book. I know how powerful the book is, but I wanted you to hear from him why he wrote it and why you should read it. So, David, thanks for coming on our show. So, welcome to the Wealth Wisdom Financial Show.
Brandon, thanks so much for inviting me. It's great to be here today. I'm looking forward to this.
Awesome. Um, so in Canada, you say a lot. Is that what they do? I don't even know.
I've heard a rumor that's true. I don't notice it, but I think maybe it's like something you just get used to. Maybe you just after a while you don't realize.
Yeah, it's kind of like being in Texas. People think I don't have an accent, but then if I go, like, I'm from Southeast Texas, but now I have a Yankee accent apparently. So I don't know. It's weird. They all call me Yankee when I go back home. So I love how the business fortress reframes business ownership. Like, tons of owners think they're building wealth when really they're just building a fragile house of cards, right? You've seen that all the time. So I want to explore how to make the fortress real. Like, this book is the business fortress, um,
Sure.
so that the businesses that they can protect, grow, do the things that they want to love. But I want to ask you, how do if someone's coming into this world, why should they look at this? Why should they research you? Tell us a little bit about you and why they should take your wisdom.
Okay, so you want to talk about me first?
Yeah, let's
Um,
talk about you first a little bit.
I'm one of those guys who's always had an interest in business ever since childhood. I've had those, businesses that kids do, and as I got older, I realized that I wanted to be involved with business. So I went away to university and studied business, thinking that this would make me into a business person, right? And what they really do at university in those business schools is they teach you how to be a part of a big machine, like in one of these big companies. And
Hmm.
my heart really was in the world of small business, the businesses that we see every day when we're driving through our communities, and a lot of the businesses that are really locally owned, right? The tire shop, the grocery store, the bakery, like all that kind of stuff, tradespeople, etc. And so when I got out of university, I really got an amazing opportunity to learn about those kinds of businesses because I got a job with the Yellow Pages. And this was back in the 1990s when Yellow Pages was basically the Google of its day. If
Yeah.
you needed to get a plumber because your toilet was broken, you opened up the Yellow Pages and you found a plumber in your town and you called them up and someone would come over. And so I would go and I would meet with those people and I would learn how they made money. I would say, like, what kind of business, what kind of customer do you ideally want to have, calling you up or coming through your front door? What does it mean for you if you make $1,000 sale? $1,000 sale for a plumber is very different than $1,000 sale for the guy at the auto parts place, right? Because
Mhm.
different businesses have different costs that go into that sale. And so all of these different businesses have a different kind of business model, and they make money
Mhm.
in different ways. And a customer is worth a different amount to them. And so I get to learn all this stuff over the course of a 7-year career. And I traveled around and really had a chance to talk with almost everyone in the small business space. And so as things evolved and people moved away from the yellow pages and got into the online world, I also evolved. I became a finance broker for small businesses. So I started to help people get loans, capital leases on equipment. I help people do things like what are called factoring facilities, when you actually sell your accounts receivable to get more cash up front. And so I got the chance to start looking at a lot of small business financial statements as I was
Mhm.
helping people obtain money. And you can imagine that being a broker for small business finance, you're meeting the people who can't get helped at the bank, because the
Yep.
bank is the typical source of money for a small business, and it's often the place with the lowest interest rates. And so I was dealing with people who were being told no by the bank. And so I was seeing people who, had issues in their business. Maybe they didn't have a long enough track record, or maybe there was something wrong with their business beyond the scope of their own understanding. They thought they had a great business, but their banker told them that something like maybe their debt to equity ratio was off. And they didn't really understand, like, what does that mean? What does it mean, like,
Mhm.
my debt to equity ratio is off? And so I got to learn a lot about the struggles that small businesses go through. And I actually was able to help a lot of those people, either with financing that I was able to arrange through sort of second tier lenders, or I was able to take that case and repackage it and bring it back to the Main Street Bank and show them, hey, here's why you should give this a second look. Like, this really should be a deal that you guys are doing at the big bank. And
Yeah.
a lot of the times I was successful at that too. And so I got a chance to meet and learn with these people. And then the big financial crisis happened in 2008, 2009, and a lot of my sources of sort of subprime quality small business financing, they went out of business. And I
Mhm.
needed to pivot, and I pivoted into the world of business brokerage. So this is where you help people buy and sell companies. And again, I was thrust into the world of small business financial statements and looking at the performance of small businesses. And f- we would work on valuations, showing people what they were worth. We would show people what kind of buyer is likely going to buy their business, what they're likely going to pay, what the deal would likely look like for them. Most businesses are not purchased on cash terms. So we would
Yeah.
be showing these business owners, what would likely be the terms of sale. Are you going to have to hold some kind of financing on this transaction, et cetera? And so I grew through that period, and developed my knowledge even more. Business brokerage is a little bit of a cash flow roller coaster. Business
Yeah.
brokers typically get paid when they sell a business, and you can have months at a stretch when your office has no sales closing. And so it was up and down and up and down. And I had young children at the time. It was just a little bit too much, so I decided to leave the industry and actually became a banker, which put me again in a
Hmm.
position where I'm looking at financial statements all the time. And
Yeah.
so I'm seeing all of these patterns. I'm seeing all of these small businesses and how people are operating them, and the way they manage their business and the way they manage their wealth in conjunction with their business. Eventually, the bank reorganized. I had an opportunity to take a package to leave, and I decided to go back into the world of helping people buy and sell, but this time with a different model. And so today, I lead a team of 5 people. We work with people around the world, helping them buy and sell small businesses. We do valuations, we do coaching through that process. And we, instead of being brokers getting paid a commission, we are consultants, and we charge for our services as we do them throughout the process. So it smooths out our cash flow. But the same problems that I was seeing with those businesses that were trying to borrow money when I was trying to broker commercial debt for small businesses, we still see those same problems today in businesses that people want to sell.
Yep.
And, as far as they're concerned, they think that their business is great, or or they have other troubles or whatever going on. But we've just seen the same thing so often, and I've seen the people who are actually living a secure, carefree, comfortable life in their business, and who don't worry about a small sales dip. and who don't worry about the things that are happening in the headlines, with respect to, trade issues and all that kind of stuff. And it's because they run their business in a very different sort of way. And that was one of the principal aims that I had when I joined up with Mark to write the Business Fortress, is to talk about how you can run a business in a more secure and solid way and get rid of some of the anxiety and stress that normally is a part of being a small business owner.
That, I mean, right there, I could see myself starting our business and thinking, all of this I don't know, great stuff that's going to happen, but didn't, trying to sell it. I still have in my downstairs, I have a place for the yellow pages in my old house, which is crazy because I told my 7-year old, I'm like, you don't even know what that is. Just thinking about that. And as me and Mark and now you in this industry, I see the same things over and over again, and you're like, wow, they keep having the problems, the same problems, but the book really does some clarity. But oftentimes, again, we talk to business owners all the time. We see the same problems, and you talk about business owners needing a fortress. What's the most dangerous misconception you see among owners who think they're secure but aren't? What are some things that you see as really dangerous?
Well, one of the most common issues with small business owners is that they live on the income statement, or the P&L, as some people refer to it, the profit and loss statement,
Mhm,
where they're thinking about the sales and what it costs them to deliver those sales, and they're thinking about the expenses of their business. And it's very intuitive to do that because you're thinking about what you're doing every day, which is making sales to customers and serving the customers
mhm,
and paying the bills for your overhead. And so the income statement describes that activity, and it's the place where people are comfortable, and that's where they tend to focus. And so, if there's for some reason like a shortage of money or whatever, most people's reaction is, "Oh, I better make another sale. I better go and sell more." One of the
mhm.
things that we try to teach in the book is to develop a balance sheet mindset, and that's a completely different one of the primary financial statements that people have. And the balance sheet describes the state of affairs in your business. So this is the amount of inventory, the amount of accounts receivables, payables, cash, et cetera, in your business, the amount of your debts, et cetera.
Mhm.
And so this is what is describing your current position. And one of the things that often surprises many small business owners is that you can actually make more sales and threaten the existence of your business.
Yep.
Most people
Yep.
want to believe that selling more always means that you're going to end up with more profit, but you can actually make more sales and earn more profit and run out of cash and end up not making payroll. And it all has to do with what we call the cash conversion cycle and understanding how your business transforms sales into the ultimate cash that you need to pay your bills. So this is part of, a big part of the book is understanding what is my business model, what is the cash conversion cycle, and how can I change the cash conversion cycle so that I can be a better steward of the dollars that pass through my hands, and look at building my balance sheet, which is what is going to end up creating a more resilient organization. And when we focus entirely on sales and profits, and then what do we do with those profits? For a lot of
Mhm.
people, they work really hard trying to build up a business. Initially, they don't have a lot of earnings, and so when those earnings start to come in, they start to make more money. The first thing people want to do is take that money out because they've earned it, right? Like
Yep.
they've done the work to get this money, and that's precisely the moment where they could be making the choice to build the balance sheet, and they lose out on the opportunity to become more resilient. Whenever there's a downturn in the general economy and sales start to go down for everybody, the person who has, you know, learned to live on the amazing profitability of a high sales level, and they're relying upon that income to support their lifestyle, when things change, that's the person that suddenly not only has to make personal lifestyle changes, but also make changes in the business to reduce those expenses quickly. And that's hard to do. A
Yeah.
lot of those people end up in an over leveraged position. They end up getting into debt, then they have to service the debt. That speeds up the shrinkage of their cash position. And they end up weaker and weaker and weaker Meanwhile, the people that focused on their balance sheet, they're the ones that pick up the assets of these businesses when they close. And so
Yep.
I've been around long enough to see this story over and over again, where the people that are full of excitement and energy and build a business really quickly and never work on the balance sheet end up in a very fragile and precarious position, while the people who worked on their balance sheet, they preserved their cash, they paid down their debts, they strengthened their debt to equity ratio, which we can get into if you want. Those are
Mhm.
the people that are ready. And so when things go bad, they're the ones that grow. Quite frankly, they take over the customers and the assets of their competitors that fail, and at the end of it all, they end up with the bigger footprint economically.
Now you guys see why I had him on our show, because as you get listen to our show, right? We talk about this stuff all the time. Sales can actually just getting the big sale can cause sometimes bigger problems because we're actually masking the infrastructure, the health of the business. Knowing your numbers is really important, and again, everyone has a plan for your money. Do you? And that's what those statements, I believe, help. So, um, in your experience, how often is a business really just a job in disguise for people? Like,
Yeah.
what's the turning point for them to become the self-employed owner to a true asset?
Yeah, it's a great question. There are not many small businesses which would meet that definition of not being the owner's job.
Hmm.
And for most people, that's okay because
Hmm.
they are looking for a place to spend their time to create value and earn profits or a paycheck. And so, in order to really get to the point where it's no longer a job, you have to be able to not go there. And so it could be a lot simpler maybe for a sandwich shop owner to get to that point. You see a lot of franchise sandwich shops where the owner isn't going to be present. That's a,
Yeah.
a business that they own, but it can be deceiving too. So, if you think about a well organized, systematized business, you might think about McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
I have a friend who owns three McDonald's. He works 40 to 50 hours a week and he does not set foot in any of them. He is doing sort of the CEO level work of a person that owns three McDonald's. He's supervising the numbers as they come in. He's reviewing certain kinds of like security footage and things like that. He's reviewing the orders. He's making sure that the purchasing ratios are in line with the expenses that they expect. He's dealing with HR issues. He's dealing with all kinds of stuff, banking, making decisions about new capital equipment, etc. It's a full-time job just supervising what is happening in those businesses. I actually deal with a lot of people who want to get into the world of buying a business, and one of the things they'll say is, "I don't want to buy a job. I want to buy a business that is running on its own." And
Yep.
what I will say to that person is that if they think about the local gas station, let's say you live near an Exxon station, that Exxon station has a manager who runs the day to day. But the head office of Exxon does not let that person run the business all year and then submit financial statements to head office. There's
Yep.
somebody in the community who's called the regional manager. And that person is looking at the performance of that individual station along with maybe 15 or 20 locations, right? And
Yep.
that person is looking at the weekly sales. They're looking at the split between gasoline sales versus corner store item sales. Like they're kind of supervising that manager to make sure something is not going wrong. And when they see something in the numbers that shows that there's a problem, that regional manager will often zoom in and go talk to that manager and they'll figure
Yeah.
out why. Oh,
Yeah.
there's street construction going on right now. Okay, well, of course your sales are down. It's hard to get in here. But or is there something else? Is somebody stealing? Is there a shoplifting problem? Are certain deliveries getting delayed? Are you running out of premium? They're going to dive in there and they're going to figure out what is going on. We have to fix this. As a business owner of a small business, if you don't want to be in the store every day, you have to have that regional manager skill set. You have to know the business well enough that you can look at
Hmm.
some kind of dashboard of information about that business and you will immediately know what's going on in that business or what might be wrong. And this is where a lot of buyers fall down. You know, I there was this transmission shop that was for
Yeah.
sale and it
Yeah.
was advertised as an absentee owned transmission shop. And the person who owned it spent the majority of the year down in Florida, and this was up in a northern state.
Yeah.
And the issue, though, was that this guy had managed it himself for 20 years. And then he trained other people to do those roles. And he then started to go to Florida. Now, from Florida, because of the computer and internet, he was still doing payroll. He was still
Yeah.
doing the banking. He was still looking at the POS system every day. He would pick up the phone and call the manager, and in a 10-minute conversation, know exactly what was going on in that business. So, was it really absentee owned, or was it just being managed remotely?
Yeah, exactly. I think it
Right.
was managed remotely, right?
Exactly, but it was being advertised as absentee owned, and so that's a trap for somebody,
Mhm.
because if you don't know the transmission business and you bought that kind of business, you would not have the skill set that this gentleman had to be able to remotely manage it the way that he did. And so, for a lot of the clients that I work with that wanna buy a business, even if they're buying something that they think they can do this with, they often need to go in there on site, learn to be the manager, and then they can build the systems and processes, learn what the KPIs are, learn what numbers they want on their dashboard for management.
Mhm.
Then they can step back and train someone else to do that day-to-day management role, and they will then understand what's going on in the business because they've been in it.
Yeah.
And, so there's nothing easy about small business. And I know you know this because you've been in
Yeah.
small business. But what the people I think that kind of get tricked into this, or fall for the sort of daydream of small business, maybe are people that work in big companies where you're really good at the thing you do, and then you convince yourself that that means you're good at business. But the trick with big companies is that there's 100 other people doing their small role very well as well,
Yep.
and you don't even see all the stuff that's going on in the background that's being taken care of for you when you're in that big company. But when you're in the small business, everything falls on the owner's shoulder. And it can be quite overwhelming, especially if you're trying to work there during the day and take care of a lot of this stuff in the evenings, for example.
So in that, I mean, again, I see this all the time where people are sold something on TikTok or uh, social media, YouTube. Oh, just buy this thing, and I'll teach you how to do this, and then there's no way you're going to lose. But it's a passive income deal. And so you probably see these ads all the time. And so then you have these clients that come in and they're like, well, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to buy a washing machine company or whatever. You probably heard the dry cleaner deal because it's passive. I don't have to do anything. No one's there. And how do you combat that when it's so pervasive? When I think about this as, oh, well, if I just make a bigger sale, more sales, it'll be fine. But having those systems, and what systems would you start saying, if I was going to buy a business, what's a key system I need to be looking for right from the beginning?
Well, I think that if anyone's going to buy a business, they should know something about business. Buying a business is not for new people. Buying a business is for business people. You need to have some idea
Hmm.
what you're getting into. And the amazing thing about business is that you can actually get paid to learn business by working in a business, right?
Hmm.
So if you have a corporate job of some kind and you're thinking, I want to own my own small business, I want to own a I don't know, a salon or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, you can go work in a salon and you can
yeah,
see firsthand on your own what is going on there. And not
yeah.
just the way a customer sees it, but what's going on there all the time in the salon, and really get an idea of how these things operate. The other thing is that there's a vast amount of information available out there. So, there are publicly published records of business performance that are aggregated from tax returns. And so you
Hmm.
can look up, for example, beauty salon, and you can find the data sorted by quartile, where you can see, like, what does a bottom quartile performing beauty salon look like? What do the mid quartiles look like? What do the top tier look like? And you can see the data as far as sales and all the expenses and cost of goods sold as a percentage of revenue, and you can then see how these businesses are performing. It's amazing to me how many people don't do that kind of research. And so, like,
I just have to stop you there. Like one of the things I saw for us is we interned at a coffee shop. This was in 2007, 8, before we opened up our coffee shop. We interned, we worked for free at a coffee shop. And then, and they were like, well, why would you do that for free? Like, well, because we're going to learn everything. And then the owner went on vacation for a week and we were able to run the operation. And we did it for free. For it was good for her, the owner, and for us. And so by interning, I didn't had no experience in business, but got some by interning. And then we started that business. And now I'm like, oh, that was just the training ground of
Yeah.
owning a business, is starting a business that we did. And people are like, yeah, but it was just a coffee shop. I'm like, you don't understand all the crazy stuff that happens, that payroll, all the things that Amanda did that no one knows. And you just said, like, the systems. And that's why when I have all these like entrepreneurs coming in, like, I'm just going to do this. I'm like, yeah, you need an Amanda. You need somebody in the background building. And that's what you're saying is there's an Amanda system or something happening that you need. I'm not just saying
Well,
that she's the magic, but I would say she is. Um, that's why she's
you
part
you,
of our team.
you want to have systems, and then you want to have some kind of idea what's going to happen when the systems fail, or
Hmm.
when what do you call it? An exception occurs.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
I'll give you an example. You could have a receiving system for a small warehouse where trucks arrive. The truck driver comes around with some paperwork. It's got to be signed off. You got to count the pallets coming off. And then you have to input that inventory into the computer. And then there's a certain way to store the inventory in the warehouse, of a certain place to put different things, right? So that would be a very natural kind of system for somebody to develop if they were owned a business that had a small warehouse.
yeah.
Now, how does the system work when some of the employees show up stoned, right?
Yep.
And so, like, I love to throw questions out like this to people that are in that you're describing, and where they say, "I'm just going to get a business. I'm going to do this," right? So what is the process when you have impaired employees now
Hmm.
driving around in a forklift, moving tens or hundreds of $1,000s worth of stuff around? What's your process then? Right? And then it often becomes an exception. Now we have to have sort of the voice of ownership, or the voice of management has to come in here and start making some decisions. And it's funny because bigger companies probably have a system for this.
Yep.
Like they've got a documented policy, and some manager can open a book somewhere and it can say, okay, if you have an employee in this condition, this is what you do. Number one, do this. Number two, do this. Number three, call HR, like whatever, right? Like number one, take the keys out of the forklift keys out of their hand. Number two, ask them to leave. Number three, call HR. Like, but if you're a small business owner and you've never had to deal with that kind of thing before, then you can get stuck. And I know this because I've had clients of mine call me and say, Dave, one of my employees just showed up and got into a fight with another employee. What do I do? And I'm like, you need to get help from an HR professional,
Right. Some
right?
of it I feel like is obvious. Like I don't know. Maybe I'm just I have no idea if I'm just smarter or something. But I'm like, okay, if I have a coffee shop and I have a recipe for a drink, if I deviate from the recipe, then it's not the same drink. And so
Right.
the customer wants the same drink, whether barista one or barista three does it. And then you have clients or staff that come in and say, well, let's do it this way. And they're like, no, that's not the way it works. Here's the recipe. Here's the system. Here's the way in which we do it. And that's kind of like the McDonald's model. But you have to still make sure, like, whenever from a business perspective, we were buying a lot of milk, and people would just the staff would just throw away extra milk. It's like, all right, well, we have 15 gallons of different half open milks. And I'm like, wait, we got to figure out and measure it out, because we have waste. And then on the flip side, all these people are like, if I'm broke, so I'm gonna, or I have a little bit of 401k money, so I'm gonna go buy a business so I can make sure I'm good. And they've never actually been behind the bar of anything, or you know what I mean. And I find that interesting. um,
What I find interesting is when I do meet a lot of business owners who are in industries where staff earn tips.
Hmm.
And what's amazing to me is that there are several of them that I've met over the course of time who understand that some of their employees earn more in the business than they do. And
Yeah.
that's a big shocker to people typically on the street who just assume that business owners, are successful, wealthy people, et cetera.
Yep.
The truth of the matter is there's a lot of businesses out there that are marginal. And there's a lot of businesses, when you hear about, businesses sort of pushing back against things like minimum wage increases and things like that. When minimum wage goes up, people like to say, well, the workers deserve it. We have to give them more
Yep.
money, et cetera, et cetera. But what you then are doing to the business owner is that business may not be making a lot of money.
Yep.
And so the business owner then has to make a decision. Do I eat the cost of labor increase? Do I just
Mhm.
take it out of my profits if that's even an option? Or do I raise my prices and risk losing customers,
Yep.
right? And this is the constant tightrope that small businesses always are facing, and we're seeing it again here with the trade tariffs and things that are coming in. When the tariffs against steel were announced, I had all kinds of people call me up saying, I'm looking for solutions because the cost of one of my biggest inputs into my process just went up by 50%
Yep.
overnight by a
Yep.
government rule, right? And what do I do? Like, I don't know if my customers would be willing to buy what I sell if they had to pay that much more on top of the price that I'm already charging. And this is where I don't think the public necessarily understands the value that business brings. I heard someone, a public official, actually say that, oh well, if a business isn't making much money, maybe it's not a business we want in our community. But that's very dismissive and very arrogant, because there are
Yep.
businesses that don't make any money, but they still employ 10 people. And
Yep.
as long as they're functioning, those 10 people are getting a paycheck. The minute they stop functioning, those people are no longer making money. But business is difficult. Like, there's a central banker from the 1950s named John Exter, and he was studying what happens to money in a time of panic, like economic uncertainty. And he
Yeah.
ended up creating something called John Exter's inverse pyramid of liquidity, where he tried to describe how people want to trade some assets for more liquid assets when things are in a panic, right?
Yep.
And so at the very bottom, at the point on the bottom, he put gold. And then there's things like currency notes, treasury bills from the government, publicly listed stocks, all these other different kinds of investments, with each layer going up being less liquid. Well, small business is way up at the top because it's highly illiquid. You can buy a
Yep.
small business, and then if you decide you don't like it, it could take you 2 years to sell it again. So
Yeah.
it's highly illiquid, and it is a risky asset because so much is outside of your control. I I use the example of like Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is sold everywhere. It's a big giant company. If I opened up a very tasty microbrewery, for example, in a small town, and
Hmm.
everyone decided to drink my beer instead of Coca-Cola, I would have a successful business at the expense of Coca-Cola, but they probably wouldn't even notice,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the sales they would lose in the small town don't even register because they're such a big company. But now new competitor could open another microbrewery across the street from me, and that could put me out of business
Yeah.
because my economic footprint is so small. I'm 100% in one market, 100% in one category, 100% reliant upon a group of local people that want to come and drink my product. And as soon as there's a strong competitor that then threatens to divide that market, there may not be enough of a market for them either. But the
Yeah.
fact that they open up could actually kill us both, right? And so these risks are everywhere. Small business is one of the riskiest asset classes there are. It can be quite lucrative, which is why people get drawn into it. But I mean, I'm not a cheerleader for people that don't know anything about business to get into it. I think that baby steps are the way to go. So get a job in the industry that you think you might want to be an owner in to really learn how it works.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe start some kind of side hustle, where you can get some experience in the industry and really learn the ins and outs, make some contacts, build a network of understanding, a network of people amongst the suppliers and things like that. There's all kinds of ways that you can try to mitigate risk. I think that buying a business definitely is a way to reduce risk because you already get customers. But the problem that I see a lot of people doing is they'll end up in a bad deal where they overpay. And when
Yep.
you overpay for a business, well, now you can't suffer any shortage of sales because of the debt service you've committed to. So
Yeah.
it's almost the same risk as doing a startup and not finding enough customers, with this one big exception. If you start a business, often you're risking your savings and maybe, credit card balance or whatever that you've put into it. And if it fails, you lose that money. But if you buy a business and then lose customers and can't make your payments and the business fails, you could be on the hook for a personal guaranteed bank loan of hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And so the opportunity for loss is there as well. And then that's why we're in business, Brandon, because people come to us for help to analyze deals that they're going to be looking at. And through seeing the success and the failures over the course of time, I mean, that's all the experiences that I have that went into the book when I was writing
Yeah.
with Mark. And the reason that Mark and I did it together was because one of the tools that I've seen people use successfully in making their business more resilient is the bank on yourself style, high cash value life insurance policies. It's a tool that gives you options with respect to liquidity, and it gives you a lot of power. Like, where else can you borrow money, and you're the one that dictates the repayment terms. You can
Yep.
even pause the payments if you want with no repercussions. Like, there's so many advantages. But for people out there that own a business, this book is not sort of a marketing piece for Bank on Yourself. One of the things that I set out with Mark at the beginning is, I said, look, I do not want any one-star reviews on Amazon saying this is just a book about pitching life insurance. This
Yeah.
book is about small business, and it's about building a stronger small business that is more resilient to downturns and ultimately builds more value for a sale, and is going to be better at providing for you and your family in a more predictable way. And we show all different kinds of tools in there that you can use to achieve this. Just life insurance being one of them.
Well, and and I want to close it up here, but knowing, you guys hear my story a lot of times, but as
Mhm.
I was reading the book, thinking about last to get paid, the staff makes more than me. I'm the greatest asset still, even though the other, we're not making a ton of money. We are the greatest asset. If we go, then the business goes, right? Um, and knowing that we are in a world, like, I was a coffee shop. Everybody loves Starbucks, but they would be afraid to walk into my coffee shop. And then I'd have different taxes because I'm a coffee shop, not a grocery store. And the grocery store didn't have a certain tax on their coffee, and I've had clients yell at us because they're like, well, why are you paying this extra tax? I'm like, because it's a restaurant thing and they're not a restaurant, even though they're a restaurant. Um, and it would get really confusing and frustrating, and big business plays different rules, and small business, we're trying to help. And so I would say, as you guys are listening to this, support your small business owners, right? Sometimes maybe it looks like they're making decent money. Oftentimes it's a struggle. It's really hard. But I want to close with this: is, as you think about business, just one final question is, how do you connect personal? Because a lot of times the business owner is stressed doing all the things, and they deflect, or they don't take care of personal. How do we bridge the gap between business and personal? And how do you see this book helping in bridging that?
Yeah. So personal and business gets mixed up whenever there's scarcity.
Hmm.
Because when there's abundance, what I do in my business is all of my employees and myself, we're paid twice a month.
Hmm.
And that money goes from my business into my personal account, and I run my household on that money. And so when I'm at home doing my personal stuff with my household and everything, I'm running my household just like every other employed person out there. I'm living within my means, laid out with that paycheck that I get. And then within my business, I know that that payroll is a certain expense I have to pay out every month, and my business, works with that, and my business is profitable. I can then focus on my business, knowing what my expenses are, knowing what my sales are, et cetera, and I can focus on making it run correctly.
Hmm.
When we end up with problems of mixing the personal and the business, it's often because these things happen. Something goes wrong in the business, and now I don't want to take money out of the business because I'm afraid I might need it. So I don't pay my personal, paycheck or salary from the
Hmm.
business.
Yep.
But then there's some kind of urgent need in my personal life because I didn't take a salary. Now I got this bill that's late that's got to be paid. So the only place I know of to get money is from the business. And so as soon as this chain of events begins, you lose control.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden, you don't really know what's going on. And a lot of the times with small businesses, if there something is going wrong, it's often because they just don't know their numbers. They don't have good bookkeeping. They're not
Hmm.
able to look at their financial statements in their business and see what's happening. It's not being kept up to date. It's not accurate, et cetera. And then they start doing things like taking money out of the business account for personal stuff, and then they don't record it properly,
Yep.
and it becomes more and more obscure. We lose visibility into what's happening, and all of this is going to do is it's going to do two things. What's that famous quote about bankruptcy? It happened very slowly at first and then all at once.
I,
I don't know if
I don't even know the quote, but
oh,
it
okay.
sounds like a good quote. Um,
So what happens is that you start to play this juggling game with cash,
yep.
and then you start to think that you're smart with it because you
Mm.
seem to be able to juggle it and you seem to be able to be on top of these things. But what is happening is that both in your business and your personal life is there are accruing liabilities which you're not recognizing.
Yep.
So the business, even though you've got these cash shortages, may in fact be earning an accounting profit, which means you will have some kind of tax bill due. And that
Yep.
means all of a sudden you're going to get to the end of the year, the accountant's going to tell you you made money. Now you got to file a tax return and you owe taxes. And then like where are you going to get the money for this?
Yep.
And so you end up on this slippery slope of juggling things between personal and business. And then you hit a brick wall with something like a big tax bill. And then you say, oh my God, how am I going to deal with this now? And then people make one of two choices. They either choose to address it, which often means having tough conversations with creditors, with their landlord, with people like that. And it may lead to closing the business, may lead to them having to go talk with a bankruptcy attorney or something like that. Or they choose to ignore further, which means they're just dragging this stuff out. Now they owe money to the government. Now they owe money to other people, right? And it just makes the problem worse and worse. And unfortunately, I've seen people go through this. And the key to the whole problem was that there were issues in the business which were
Yep.
never fixed. And the worst thing that can happen is if your business starts to fail and then you start to feed that business with your own personal resources. The purpose of a business is to provide a product or service in a way that earns you money so that you can then support yourself and your family. And if the business isn't doing that, you have to set some very clear criteria for what needs to happen and what the timeline needs to be. You need to draw your red line, if you want to put it
Yeah.
that way, where you say, we have to figure out how to get the sales up to here, how to get the profits up to here so that this makes money again. And we have this much time to do it. And if you want to be really forthright and honest, you need to bring your team in on this too,
Yep.
because their jobs are at stake as well. And working together, you're going to have a greater opportunity to come up with different ideas and try different things. But if you cannot achieve that goal, if you cannot pull the business around in time to do to meet that deadline, then you have to realize that the business is no longer an asset. It's a liability.
Yep.
And you want to get rid of liabilities. You don't want to let them drag you down. And so, that's the point where people have to start thinking like, how do I shut this thing down? Do
Hmm.
I go get a job? Like, how am I going to support myself? You don't want to let a business turn into a liability and then turn into an anchor that drags you down into the water.
Yeah. I think that is again why we sold Overflow, and the changes that were happening was because of those things. And again, why we I highly recommend the Business Fortress. Again, how to grow, scale, and protect. like Grow, Protect, and Exit Your Business. It is on Amazon. The reason that I think it's so powerful, it's not just, again, the life insurance is the reason that I was able to sell the business and not close the business, because of those things that we did, not knowing this book was, I mean, what didn't exist then, but some of those things, and why I think this is powerful. And so as you guys are running businesses, as you are thinking, hey, it's going to be the golden brick road, whatever, yellow brick road. After I buy this business, it's going to be perfect, sunshine and rainbows. That's not always the case. And so building with the end in mind, also get this book, even if you have a successful, like, years, I'm on the moon. It's great. Well, at some point you might want to sell, or have the ability to sell. So get this book, so that way you are in the even better position to sell it for a higher number versus a smaller number. So any closing things you want to leave these guys with before we end it?
No, just if anyone out there is interested in the topic of buying, selling, financing, or managing small businesses, just come find me anywhere on social media. If you type David Barnett Small Business in any of the podcast catchers or YouTube, you'll find me. I've been online now for over 11 years. I've got like 700 videos on different topics. And that's the stuff that me and my guests talk about on a regular basis. And if you are thinking about getting to a position where you want to sell your business one day, I'd love to help you. You can find more information just by looking me up online.
Cool. And you guys know, if you look us up and you want to talk to David, well, we have a direct connection. So thanks, guys, for joining us. Don't forget, hit that like, subscribe, buy that book. If you're a business owner, I've sent it out to a bunch of business owners recently because I know how valuable it is. I read it. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I would have had this, probably would have made less mistakes. So David and Mark are amazing. I know Mark is. I've known him for years. So, and I'm really glad to have connected with you, David. So thanks again for joining us, and we will see you guys next time.
Thanks, Brandon.